There are two very important key things that we need to understand before we get into part 1 of this video, and that is transference and somatic links. So transference is essentially taking your consciousness or your mind outside of your body and, well, almost transferring it to something else. The somatic link is a device used to be able to do that. You can see a great example of the somatic link with the chair that you as the operator used if you have gotten that far into Warframe. If you've not gotten that far, I don't know what you're doing in this video because you are going to get some spoilers. So let's get into part 1 of this video. Margulis. Margulis was an Arcan elite Archimedian, which are basically Arcan scientists and researchers in expert fields, and sometimes even people in a teaching position. After the Zariman Ten-Zero incident, she was the one trying to figure out how to help the Tenno children who were suffering from their time in the void, so she worked on and pioneered transference technology. It was originally made to be like a therapeutic technology where there would have been surrogate bodies made with the infestation and Helminth strain so the Tenno children could live in and have more peace in their minds, but the Arcan had other ideas. So during that time, the Warframes themselves were also started to be created, right? But the Arcan Empire had a huge problem with them. They couldn't be effectively controlled because they were still somewhat conscious, even though the Helminth strain and the infestation were essentially rotting them away from the inside. They were starting to become mad and go crazy because they were under extreme torment and extreme pain the whole time, emotional and physical. But then the Arcan Empire figured out that the Tenno children, they can calm the minds of the Warframes and essentially control them by taking over their bodies using transference and the somatic links that, like I said, were essentially the chairs that allowed them to do so. So they did it. But Margulis, she didn't like that at all. She didn't want that to happen at all. She was directly opposed to it, actually, in fact, but she couldn't do that much, right? Then the sentient war broke out. Well, it kind of started to break out earlier already, but then it started to ramp up very, very quickly. So the Tenno children were sent to Tau, where they still had the war going on, but at some point a peace treaty was signed between the Sentients and the Arcan Empire. That is now what we know as the Old Peace. During that time, we know the events that's happening, and I'm not going to go over it because it's not for this video, but the end is very, very important. At the end of it, when the Tenno or the operator essentially, specifically, kind of went crazy and used Uriel to cause extreme destruction, they came upon Margulis instead of Ballas, where Margulis admitted that she was essentially a co-conspirator of everything that happened, and then puts the Tenno to sleep and kind of makes them forget their memories of Tau overall. So after the Old Peace happened, something else happened with that. Margulis was executed by the Seven.
We have gathered here today to carry out the sentencing of Archimedian Margulis. You face the Jade Light. Recant, and we will grant a merciful death.
And the reason she was executed because she was directly opposed to them using the Tenno as Warframes, as well as the fact that she took away their memories of Tau, and she was just directly opposed to their laws and what they wanted to do. They saw it as kind of blasphemy. I think the right word is apostasy, actually. And she was executed. One problem though. Ballas was madly in love with her. She was the love of his life. So he decided, screw the Arcan Empire. And this is where we get into part 2 of the story. Natah. There is 2 major figures in the sentient world. The first one being Hanhao.
I am Hanhao, sentient destroyer of worlds. By your hand, expose their heart. By my edge, leave it beating from its nest.
And the second one being Bragasa, which is essentially a sentient mothership. Now, they are the parents of 2 specific sentients, Era and Natah. So Ballas betrayed the Arcan Empire by working with Hanhao, the sentient destroyer of worlds, and together they devised the plan. Hanhao sent his daughter Natah, the sentient, over to the Origin system to infiltrate the Arcan Empire and take control of the Tenno children, which she should be destroying at the end of this, right? But right after he sends her over to the Origin system, something interesting happens. And kind of disturbing, to be honest. So Ballas somewhat transforms and reworks Natah to look like Margulis. And at first glance, he does this so that she can infiltrate the Tenno children and, defeat them and defeat the Orokin Empire kind of from the sidelines. And it's some sort of a way so that he can get the Tenno to actually trust her. But that wasn't his only reason why. Ballas was somewhat obsessed with Margulis, and he wanted her back, so he wanted Natah to physically become Margulis. But that didn't happen, or technically it did, but it also didn't. She never loved him back. But instead, she became the Lotus. Because at some point, during all of that, she began to really care about the Tenno children. Something inside of her was calling to her love, compassion. And the war was coming to an end. So the Warframes, they defeated the Sentients, and there was a massive celebration, the Night of the Naga Drums. And in that, or at that faithful night, something extreme happened. Natah, or now the Lotus, she ordered the Tenno to kill all of the Orokin. Everybody. She slaughtered everyone. Except for Ballas. But then she defied her orders. Because after that, she was supposed to take care of the Tenno children, and not take care in a good way, take care in the John Wick kind of way. But she grew to love them. She grew to care for them. So she defied Hanhao's orders directly. She defied Ballas's orders directly. And in an attempt to save the Tenno children from all of it, she decided the best course of action was to use every ounce of power she could gather, every little bit that she could muster, and send the reservoir where all the Tenno children were sleeping, on Lua, which is the moon, everything into the void. And it's an epic, epic scene. It looks incredible. But she was then dying, and once they got to the void, there was a situation where the indifference came into play, and it seems like he creeps his way into everything. And he asks her a question, and this gets revealed in the latest Warframe Tau trailer or gameplay demo. He asks her, "Do you want to die? Or do you want to live on and watch over them forever?" And in every timeline, she chooses to be alive so that she can watch over them forever. But she does something very specific. She puts them to sleep, and at that moment, all the Warframes cease to exist. And you see this in the opening trailer of the game. The first trailer of the game, where all the Warframes just fall down and they go silent. And the reason she did this was because they're in the void, they will be susceptible to the indifference, to the voices in their heads, and they will go mad eventually. But by putting them to sleep in a deep, deep slumber, she can save them, she can protect them. And at some point, maybe thousands of years later, you hear the voice. Wake up, Tenno.
Wake up.
Alright, so if I go on with the story, I'm probably gonna spoil a lot of the things about the Tenno as well. So if you want me to create a version of this for the Tenno as well, and then we can talk about more Natah/Lotus stuff, then let me know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps out a lot.